call again. I've got to say Áine's lines. Sadly, due to work commitments and the way the days have gone, it's me and Ting today, no Áine, which is going to be interesting for lingerie week, isn't it, Ting?
I don't think that we're really qualified to be discussing this week in as much depth.
Might be a very short episode, or you can join in with the comments then. And
and there's going to be no arguments, because normally you'd be trying to pitch us off against each other.
Were you looking forward to lingerie week anyway, just as a topic, or were you like, oh god?
No.
Yeah.
I think on two fronts, because obviously the first one was absolutely not relevant to me at all, although then we found out they were making pajamas, but it wasn't Build Pajama Week, it was Build Lingerie Week. And then second of all, I also just felt for all of the sewers, I mean, I know Christian's the only man left standing as it is, but all of them stood there and go, well, why would you make your own bra? Yeah. So it was almost it was a level playing field, because nobody, like with all the other tasks, there's always been somebody go, oh yes, I've done this. Oh yes, I remember when I made this 10 years ago or whatever. But everyone kind of just looked at this and went, no, that's it. Fine, I'm done.
Yeah, and even during that first round of the matching bra and knickers, some of them were saying, I've never worked with elastic before. So
lace, in that side. I mean, you might have worked with a lace trim, but to actually work with a panel.
Oh, yeah. Why would you in that respect? I mean, let us know in the comments what you thought of.
Let us know in the comments how many people have run up their own bra.
Yes. So let's go into it then. The pattern challenge, yes, was to make matching bra and knickers from lace. Lots of pieces. You've got elastic in there as well, and you've got those the clips and the wire. That's a wrap.
Very fiddly again. I made a comment about having to make the parka and how fiddly it was.
Yeah.
Well, here this was fiddly because of the size of it. It was tiny. What you were trying to do, and then like putting a gusset in, putting the wires in, putting the straps and everything on, the hook and eye, it was just very fiddly.
Yeah.
One.
And Christian made a good point. He was like, I've said it the wrong way around. The whole construction of it would have been following that pattern. And you know what we've said before, sometimes a two-dimensional pattern is really hard. When you can go to YouTube and literally watch someone doing it, you can go, yes, but...
You can go to Marks and Spencer's and buy a bra.
Or that. So I can understand why some were having difficulty on, where's that going? Is that going there upside down or whatnot? And
I think because they obviously had to line it, didn't they? Because you wouldn't want all that rough old fabric against
chafing.
Get jogger's nipple, wouldn't you?
Yeah. All right, let's quickly talk about them. Brogan with her pink. I would say breeze through. She did have I think the straps were
like
the straps here. They were on the front rather than the back.
Yeah.
She still seemed to breeze through, didn't she?
She did, but then I felt that she had a rough ride this week because she wasn't coming first and everything. No. She was buried in there on all of the challenges as well. So, I think that, I don't want to say brought her down a peg or two, but I think she's been riding quite hard on it. And I think it was a bit of a reality check that she can't do everything this week.
But she was making the same mistakes that others were making. Yeah. So maybe that was the challenge from that point of view. Deborah and that grey lace.
I was torn about that because first when I saw it kind of on the table, I was like, I reckon that'll look really good. And then when she was making it, I was like, grey? I'm not too sure about that. But then when it was finished, I was gone back to, actually, it looks quite nice.
Yeah, it did. And that's when
all I can think about is, like when you've got an old pair of pants and it's gone grey in the wash after like 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like the emergency pants at the back of the drawer. It just reminded me of that kind of grey. I was halfway through. I was like, I don't know if that's going to work.
You've got emergency pants. That's good.
Well, at the back of the drawer, you never know.
Well, my emergency pants are nothing. Oh dear. And clearly she'd lace, it's going to be hard. In certain places, Deborah obviously stretched it too much, I think, with the elastic. So obviously, was it too tight? I got the impression, or had she stretched the lace?
I don't really know, because I've never worked with lace either as a fabric. So,
and that's where the judging
there's
is
got to be
difficult.
some give in it. So yeah.
Man Yi with her blue, that sort of dark blue set looked quite nice. She seemed to have good knickers. Do you know, I always feel weird saying knickers. Do you? It feels rude. Because it's kind of an old-fashioned swear word, isn't it?
What are you going to say then?
I don't know.
Pants?
Yeah, I don't know. Briefs? No, that's
briefs. No, that's bloke. Pants. You know, if you don't really want to go with knickers.
It's good. Bloomers. On the old-fashioned ones. That would have been fun to have made, wouldn't it? Rather than...
I should have dug mine out, shouldn't I? My bloomers.
Yeah. Your panto ones. And then Jill. I say, I'm in no particular order here. I've got Jill next with the pink. Oh, it was hard watching her from the beginning, wasn't it?
Well, yes, but then I think it was hard watching all of them, because all I could see was everyone trying to get this tiny little bits of material to try and stay together and not stretch, and then put it through the sewing machine, and then
and this is where we have to say, for Jill, remarkable little pieces. Sometimes when we're sewing, we make that comment, I need 4 or 5 pairs of hands, and poor old Jill is doing it with one. How she manages to control that fabric with one arm and the shorter arm, the stump, that's incredible, isn't it?
I know that I don't think we made an agreement, but we just haven't commented on the fact that she's only got one arm. We've kind of let that ride until now, and I think it's quite right, given what happened in the episode, to talk about it now. But you are totally right. I have absolute admiration for how well she's done. And then, like I said, because this challenge was tiny little bits of material, you just felt that she couldn't do that, as she was, because she couldn't get in there, really tight. Like you say, normally you'd want 2 or 3 pairs of hands, but let alone when you're working with that tiny little bits of fabric.
Yeah, and this is where watching her is a marvel. And Jill, if you are watching this, you have just opened our eyes to how we as humans, how you can overcome things and still do what you want to do.
Yes, but I think Jill would also turn around and say there is no way she's going to be making her own underwear. Yeah. She can do what she can do, and she knows what she can do, and I'm pretty sure she knows she can't make a bra.
But it was wonderful watching her, how she was balancing the fabric and then using her other hand as well. It was.
Just the other thing, and not just I know Jill ended up with those tucks, but a couple of the others did as well. But the thing is, again, with this pattern, it again, with it being so small, it was so difficult. You couldn't unpick. It's lace. Trying to unpick lace, you'd have to start again, and they don't have time to start again. Do you know what I mean? Once you've committed to something, it's like you could see Jill's face just drop, because she realised what she'd done, and she was like, I have no time to unpick it. I've no time to start right over again. I've got to go with what's going here. And we've said this before. If you were doing it at home, you would throw it in the corner, you'd come back 2 hours later, you'd unpick it or you'd recut it, and you'd just start again. Yeah. But on there, you're on a treadmill. You're just constantly moving forward. Yeah. And you have to finish what's in front of you. So she did really well to make it end up looking like it did, because she had no option. She couldn't unpick it. She couldn't not finish it.
They all had problems with the bra. They did the knickers first, didn't they? And they were all on their models.
Well, I mean, it's still, don't get me wrong, it's still difficult, but at the end of the day, it was just those 2 bits of fabric with the gusset sewn in between and then brought together with the elastic. Although I did sit there, and I nearly messaged this to you, because I was just like, are we not putting any elastic around the top? Because obviously men's briefs, boxers, whatever, we have the elastic round the top, don't we? And I was just like, are these just being held up round the leg? with those.
No, there must have been some round the top.
There wasn't elastic round the top.
Was there not?
No, because they sat, obviously the lace with its fluted edge, sat very lovely against the dummy's stomach.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I suppose if you are as svelte as a dummy, it would look very nice on you as well. But part of me was like, well, there's nothing, you know, gripping on at the top.
No. Oh, well.
You'd be walking down the Riviera in your beach outfit from the other week, and your knickers just end up round your ankles.
Ooh. Well, that's not too bad if there are people around. Well, no, let's not go there. Oh, dear me. Well, ladies, is that the case? Was there no elastic then?
Well, it wasn't in this. It's just be interesting if that was a common feature. Do you often feel, I wish I had more elastic around my waist?
Áine, who seemed to cruise by that white knicker and bra set, laid very flat. It did look good, didn't it?
It did, but then part of me was like, well, that is the traditional colour, really, isn't it? You'd go for white. But also, I also felt you couldn't see it on the white mannequin. You know, everyone else's, it was really obvious where there was things not gone quite right. Whereas on the white mannequin, it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, I suppose it looks all right, but it kind of blended in a bit. So I think she lucked out a bit there as well.
And then obviously we saw Christian as well. We know how, you know, he struggled and he got the cuts the wrong way round and he had to re-sew and everything.
Yeah, but there was only that bit because he still did really well, like on his knickers and he got the straps and that round the right way.
Well, I think I said this to you during the chat. The edit made it look like they were all struggling and panicking and not understanding it. Yet when it was like 30 seconds left, put them together, suddenly they all had lovely bras and knickers. Well, didn't they?
There you go. It's like when you edit this, you make us look good.
Jill 6th, Christian 5th, Deborah 4th, Brogan 3rd, Manny 2nd, Áine 1st. What did you go for the 9 minutes, 11 minutes past 9?
Well, I've lost my streak, haven't I? Because I went for Man Yi, and of course that's played out completely differently in the whole episode. But it was a typical thing again of backpedaling halfway through the episode. It's like, yeah, I know now I've got that wrong. But again, we were stuck because I think I texted you going, don't forget. And then they put the history on, didn't they?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, so
well,
I have no idea here.
Well, I went for Deborah because she said, oh, I've not used elastic before. I went, well, she's going to go then.
Well, I can't remember. Manny said something similar at the beginning, and it was kind of what had happened the last couple of weeks where people had said something. I just read too much into something that Man Yi had said, although I can't remember what it was now, and was just like, well, let's go with that, because we hadn't really seen any sewing either.
No.
So I think, you know, they're catching us out with the history bit, although it was good to see like all the lace stuff as well, and seeing all the cards going through those old machines, creating the lace.
Who knew about Nottingham being the home for lace? Didn't know that at all. So I've learned something today.
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you've got Nottingham for lace, you've got shoes Northampton, you know, there's all different areas of the country.
Yeah, well, I knew obviously about wool and, you know, Bradford and Keith.
Yeah, well, it's the same principle.
Yeah.
Same principle, yeah.
Right, transformation round then. Thermal sleep set. They had to turn it into a garment, another garment to go out in.
Well, and why would you want to go out in your old 90, for God's sake?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, I could do with it being the other way around. You know, instead of doing the walk of shame in the morning, I need something that you go out in and you can turn it into.
To sleep.
Turn it into a 90.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was already like, oh, God, can we not have something different? I was chatting with Carol as well at the same time, and Carol went, change it into a hat. Like,
well, we've had shoes.
Yeah, so. Rather than a garment. Well, a hat is it a garment? Probably not. But yes, come on, let's think of something a bit more interesting than another garment to go out in. I think we've had 2 or 3 garments to go out in for the trip.
Well, and I think didn't we have for the athleisure one? You know, that was supposed to be the slouchy stuff you've been wearing during lockdown to go out in, and it's like, well, actually, it's the same material, it's the same sort of stuff. It was the same. I just think. Sorry, here we go. I just think that this challenge, I know we've never been a fan, but it's got very boring because it's very samey. Yeah. It's always a garment to go out in. It's always it's not a transformation challenge like perhaps we did have in previous series where you were actually going, oh, it now looks completely different. It's like the go-to now is just take that pile of old toot over there and turn it into something to go out in. I don't know.
Which is a shame because we had been saying how well they'd thought about the transformation challenges so far, or most times in this season. We haven't been shouting too much about it. But anyway, quick flick through in the order that I've written them down in. Brogan, she had that. I saw her draping at first. She clearly was getting into that, but had her one, which I have only written. What have I written? Cutting the model. I've not written anything else.
I was kind of hoping that you were going to say something a bit more because I can't remember what it was.
No, I can't. Terrible. Deborah, obviously we know because it won Garment of the Week. That sweatshirt, how she changed it in the yellow and grey, and the two bows and the frill down the front.
Yeah, and you know, it was a good piece of sewing, and it did, you know, kind of look different there, and it did have those overtones of Chanel, as Esme kept saying. But I also just looked at it and went, well, you can clearly see it's a yellow bloody nightie.
Yeah.
And that's not Deborah's fault. Deborah did what she could to it, but it was just that goes back to the challenge again of it just being a bit of a rubbish challenge.
Was Man Yi trying to be a bit different with the straps that, you know, turning it into this sort of...
Well, that went wrong, didn't it?
Well,
because she spent what seemed like an hour of the 90 minutes creating these straps and then suddenly went, oh, I can't go out in that. Well, no, the old girls would be out there, wouldn't they? So she just seemed to then put like a yellow slip underneath that she hadn't done anything to. Yeah, I felt she should have been roasted a bit more for that, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Jill and the sort of boob tube sort of down one side sleeve thing.
Well, it just didn't work. I think that was where I was going to you going, oh no, because I actually really like Jill. And I was like, oh no, I think Jill's had it. I think this week is hers. And it just didn't work. But then again, it's those stupid like jersey-esque. I mean, it wasn't all jersey, but it's that nightwear type fabric, isn't it?
Yeah, Áine though was inspired. That was clever. That was unique the way she sort of twisted that round, and even though it was so simple.
But all I could think of was having a nice whiff of the gusset of an old pair of pajamas. You'd have to make sure you got a lot of eau de cologne around here, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, because it was clever use of the leggings, wasn't it?
Well, but that's just it. That's where it's just ridiculous, because you wouldn't actually do that, because if it really, truly, genuinely was an old pair of pajama bottoms, the last thing you'd want is a gusset sat right here. Like how many times you've washed it, I wouldn't want that sat right there.
But we've said about this, the transformation round is the chance for a particular mindset, a different type of sewer. It's that creative. Yeah.
And design-wise, with the chain going through it and what she'd done, if you'd have just given her a pile of flat fabric and she'd done the same sort of thing, no doubt you wouldn't even question it. And it was still even a good use of, you know, the pattern of the trouser, because she'd seen, obviously, by turning it upside down and twisting it around, that was going to do something. But if you're going to go down the route of, oh, well, here are these items for you to wear to go out in, well, I'm sorry, no, I don't want some old smelly old gusset around my neck.
Christians, for me, I felt this was kind of overlooked. I thought this was more beautiful than they gave credit for. You know, that how it just flowed, and the two layers with the little daisies. It seemed to have lots of lovely movement and drape to it.
And this is where, again, and I know we always say about the judging and their rules and everything like that, but we actually got a bit more of an insight, I think, into Christian, because he turned around and said, oh, you know, this is something I feel that you'd go for a barbecue in the park and you'd be sat having a picnic, and it's not supposed to be, I want it to come out and be very floaty. And then he put the daisies on to highlight that. And that really worked. And I think you're right. It was overlooked. But then I think it was partly overlooked because of the fabric. It was horrible nighty fabric. If he'd have done that in a lovely fabric and made, you know, like a maxi type. I know we did maxi dresses a few weeks back, but you know, a maxi type dress in proper fabric and put that on, it would have looked stunning.
Yeah, but I didn't mind the fabric.
I didn't know. I didn't mind the colours, but you could
still
tell it's old Wincy at 90.
Oh yes.
Well, probably not.
Well, when you're on a picnic, it don't matter, maybe.
Yeah, but that's just what I felt. His was probably more practical, because even though Deborah won, I still want to be faffing around with all those bows and everything on my chest.
Jill 6, we're now like, oh, she was good. We've liked her from the beginning because of her sewing. You know how she's gone through and her creativity. I thought she was in my top 3. I wanted her in my top 3. So
although I felt that there was a glimmer of hope, because of course we've had it before where people have done particularly badly, and it was that case of, oh well, if she does a really good end, and I was like, please.
And they did say it, didn't they? Yes, it takes an exceptional made to measure and someone else to really fluff up.
But and I have to say this, because I think we said the same, or I think we've said it every week in some way, shape or form. I didn't want Jill to go home, but who would you have sent home? Because this is the thing, this year they have all been so good. It's not like in previous years where perhaps the old slipper has been flying because you genuinely feel that somebody who is not that good at sewing is being put through over somebody who perhaps just had a bit of a blip. You know, I didn't want Jill to go. I would have loved to have seen her in the final. But who would you have gone? Who would you have sent home? And because they're all in the same position. And, you know, I think next week's going to be the same thing. Yeah. It's not that anyone there is bad. It's not that anyone's been bad for the whole series.
No. It's just going to be down to, I wasn't very good today.
And that's a bit of a bummer, really.
Manu 5th, Brogan 4th, Christian 3rd, Áine 2nd, and Deborah got it with the bows and the Chanel. So there we are. So we know we're going into the made to measure. As you just said, they had that conversation that you could come out if you had a really good made to measure. But we knew the pressure was going to be on because they were making luxury pajamas for men. Are you a pajama person? Or was that a bit too personal?
Well, I did feel that I should be wearing you know, maybe some pajamas, but don't own any. And then I thought, well, you know, maybe we should be wearing what we wear to bed. And then I thought, no, because that would probably not be safe for YouTube.
It's interesting, isn't it? I remember my granddad always wearing pajamas.
Yeah, I think it was a different...
Is it a generation thing?
Yeah.
Is it also a class thing, a wealth thing? Do you imagine rich young men to wear pajamas?
I have no idea.
No, it's interesting.
I think the fact that they were saying it's luxurious, what sprung to mind for me is if you had gone away and you were perhaps in a hotel, like if you'd gone to the Savoy or the Ritz or something like that, that's to me would also be the luxury side of it, is that you'd be in your luxury suite and you would be wearing your pajamas because you'd be getting your room service delivered, and you know, you'd be sat on the balcony having your breakfast and, you know, not having to worry about life because you've got millions in the bank or whatever. But you know, it was that kind of lifestyle. Whereas like me, I get up in the morning, I've probably worn this t-shirt today and worn it to bed tonight. I'll probably get up in the morning, have me tea, jump in the shower, get dressed and go to work. I'm not going around the house in my pajamas and smoking jacket with my cigarette holder going through and wondering whether today's papers have yet been delivered and Jeeves has pressed them. I think, you know, there was an element of, that's why I think they wanted it to be luxury, because you do think, well, if I was going to have luxury pajamas, they would be silk, and you know, I would be then wearing them to show them off, and they wouldn't have been cheap.
And you can understand why Deborah, out of one of them, made those references to Noel Coward for luxury.
Because he would have been wearing them to receive guests. You know? And then that probably is a class thing, because, you know, they would have been dressed for, you know, like breakfast meetings like that, I suppose.
So Patrick says it's all about the detail, which makes them luxury. So as you said, the silk and the type of fabric, but then the piping and the finish. So we're looking for seams, French seams, rather than just being overlocked and turned.
They didn't specify French seams.
No.
Most of them decided that that's what they were going to do, because that is luxurious, because of the you essentially have to sew every seam twice. So you know, it's that putting that extra bit of effort in.
Now, it's interesting because we learned even more from Jill here, because she said they have time to practice, but she overtly said, I practiced it and I did it all with time, I think she said, didn't she?
Yeah. Which just gave me a little bit of hope, but then it kind of went, but now this is all time is running away from me. I was like, oh.
So the same order that we've used for this round, Brogan, controversial one, isn't it?
Well, for the first time, well, no, not for this series, because I think we've seen it a couple of times this series, where they have actually made a bit more of the judging about the fabric that you've chosen, because, and I'm trying to defend Brogan, but then also kind of semi-attacking her in the same way. But I suppose that when you're going on here and you're told to plan all your things and this is what you've got to make, you know, she's probably sat at home, she's found this pattern and probably gone, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it in that. And like we've said before, you play to your strengths. So she's probably gone, actually, to do this in that amount of time, I'm going to use a cotton lawn. She would have planned all of that at home and then turned up and then seen everybody else is using either a satin or a silk, because that's seen as luxurious. So part of me was like, well, she's probably chosen because she knows she can do it.
Yeah, and rightly so.
We've always said that. Do that. If that's what you can do, do that. But then at the same time, I also then felt, well, you've not really understood the brief, because men's pajamas are men's pajamas. If you're asked to make luxury men's pajamas, the first thing I would have said to you was, well, they need to be in silk.
Yeah.
So part of me was like, well, you actually deserve a bit of a...
well, that's what Patrick said, wasn't it? It was, well, they're cotton, they're small buttons, they're short sleeves, they're square collar, and they're shorts.
Well, and
it's
also,
it's a beach set.
I know cotton lawn has a bit more give to it, but it's not as bad as the slippery silks that everyone else was using. In terms of being able to sew it up quite quickly without the fabric slipping, you know, she was able to do that, whereas a lot of the others were then having problems with movement.
Indeed. But as we said about the judging, it's yes, you can take that into account. But she made a pajama set. But I did kind of feel the same as Patrick, is that, and she didn't do this, but it was, what was it, 2 or 3 weeks back when Steve was still there, and you could do it was the beach wear. Oh, yes.
But it was when they chose to do the men's outfits. And I'm sorry, but Brogan's looked like those summer two-pieces.
Yes,
it did look. Yeah. And I think that was partly because of the fabric she's chosen. It looked like a summer beach fabric. And you know, they do look very much like pajamas. If you go back and look at Christian's and Steve's from that week, they have that same sort of pattern that a pajama has. So, you know, she didn't do herself any favors by choosing a cotton lawn that looked like a summer fabric anyway.
That's the thing. It looked fabulous, but were they luxury?
Yeah,
stereotypical luxury pajamas.
Yeah, you cannot fault her on her sewing. No. Yet again, it was brilliant sewing, brilliant piping. Everything she did was really, really good, but you just felt that she'd missed the brief on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. Deborah then with her Noah Coward inspiration, almost similar to Brogan, short sleeves and shorts, which you know wouldn't exactly think of as pajamas, but she had the silk, didn't she? And the collar was curved and not square.
Yeah, and it was done right up to But no, I loved the colour, because she did red piping, didn't she? I think she had the white pattern, the blue fabric, the white pattern, and the red piping.
Yeah.
So I thought that was all very complimentary. again,
matching.
because I'm not really a pajama wearer. The whole long pant, short pant side of it. The only time I would wear something to bed is in the winter when it's cold.
Yeah.
And so I do have like a pair of pajama bottoms that I would wear to help stay warm in the winter. When it's summer, they're gone, but so I would say that was why I'd want a long leg. But equally, if I'd gone away on holiday and it was like a nice warm place, but I was taking a pair of pajamas to lounge around in, then I think a short pajama is fine. I didn't have a problem. I can understand that the more traditional look is with a long leg.
Yeah. And I think that's what they were expecting, basically.
And I think the trouble, that's going back to Brogan, is that was the problem, is that the short leg did kind of make things look more summery, outsidey.
Of course it did. Yeah, absolutely. And the pocket was obviously stitched a bit too far over, wasn't it? It was near the armpit.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
But
it was all right.
But it looked great. The pattern.
She pattern matched everything, which was, another skill that we don't give enough credit
to. Man Yi, which to me they were classic, stereotypical luxury men's pajamas.
They were
solid colour with just a little change in the cuffs. It was stunning, wasn't it?
And you couldn't falter for doing so well with those.
Piping, the pocket detail, fabulous. We come to Jill's then. Interesting style that Jill had gone for. I
think she'd nicked Deborah's pattern, probably.
Oh, yes.
I must admit, I did look at Jill's and was like, I wouldn't want to go to bed in that, because I don't, well, as we know, I don't like to tie around my neck. So it was just the way, it was that kind of Chinese style, wasn't it? It was kind of a Chinese style, but it was very high necks, and I was just like, oh, because you know what it's like when you start wriggling around in bed and you start moving around, it would come like, and so you like to have a bit of.
Why did they do the top button up? Why didn't they just not have that top one undone to show?
Well, because I think that's the style of that kind of Chinesey one, and it goes back to our original conversation: is how much are you actually wearing this in bed? And how much are you actually wearing it, in the morning when you're it's an outfit to wear rather than practical sleeping. Because let's face it, in silk, you'd be out the bottom of the bed quickly. You could
slipping around like a fish.
Oh no, that's just me and my silk sheets as well.
Annie with her paisley, with the pop of black and the black piping.
I love the fabric, and I know that you're saying about the pop, but I felt it was a bit too subtle. I think, what made Deborah's and even Jill with her errors and stuff like that is they had gone with that contrast. And I know you could argue the black is a contrast, but I just felt that, it did kind of blend in quite well. Maybe it was a bit too subtle, but I mean, it worked.
It did, yes. And then Christian. And now in this edit, it was being pushed like, is it going to be?
Well, no, because we'd gone into
or Christian.
The Joe Curse section had basically put those two in the bottom.
Yeah.
And my heart sank because I love both of them. And it was, like in the past where you think, if they'd turn around and said, well, again, I don't really know who else you would have said. But if they'd have said, like, I don't know, Jill and Man Yi, because I kind of like Jill, I would have gone, oh, well, let's please hope that Man Yi going home. But because I like Christian and Jill, I was kind of like, I need to turn off now, because either way, I'm going to be heartbroken whoever goes home.
He did have a difficult one, though, didn't he? What was going on with those sleeves? How did they end up being so low?
Well, and again,
long.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's obviously a measurement thing.
Pressure.
And, we've said before, and I know COVID has changed a lot of things, but like we said before, the models seem to be there all the time. Whereas now the model seems to come in, get measured, go out, come in for one more fitting, go out, and then come in at the end. So I suppose if you're on a track and you think you've got the right measurement, it's probably too late by the time you realise that it's not. And also it was silk again. I mean, you can't easily just hack at it and sew it back together.
No. God,
and I felt for him, because when they did the catwalk, and he had hairy seams, didn't he?
Yeah, well,
and that's the trouble with a French seam.
Yeah.
French seams are a nightmare anyway, but you have to trim it right back. So you instead of normally you'd put right sides together and sew round, and then you turn it inside out and everything's fine. Whereas what you do this time is you put right sides together. No, you put wrong sides together and you sew round.
Yeah.
And then what you should do is trim back your seam allowance as close as you can to that original, the bit that you've just sewn. Then turn it inside out and sew down. And of course, because you've turned it now inside out, so the right sides are together, you can't see if you're catching. You're just relying on the fact that your seam allowance on your sewing machine and your presser foot is wide enough, and you're just doing the old hope and sew method where you just go, I'm just going to go down here and sew that. I've done it before, is you then turn it around the right way and you realize that you haven't cut it in far enough and there's a little bit sticking out of your French seam. But because they were working with silk, which phrase, he was frantically with his scissors trying to trim all those edges, but it had also then frayed again when he'd sewn it. So then all these little hairy strands coming out, and I was just like, oh, I feel so bad for you. And you could see he was completely...
Oh, yes, And that was a time thing. Nothing else. It's just the stress of that.
But also, it's that thing of... He didn't need an extra hour. He just needed an extra 10 minutes to make sure that he trimmed that back and that all of those hairy bits are gone. Because the last thing you need is a hairy seam.
But we were there on edge, but Jill said when it was announced that she was going, yes, right decision.
Oh, and I'm just going to put in there, because I saw, if anyone else has been following any of the bees on Instagram, Christian posted his practice pair that he'd made, and I preferred the fabric, and they looked much better.
Yes. Garment of the week was Manny's pajamas.
Yeah, which again, I think it's that when you get these briefs, you just have to say, well, if someone said to me, what do pajamas look like? That's exactly what they look like. Don't try and do something too off the wall. You know, give them what they want at the end of the day. Because it was a simple pattern. I mean, we spoke about it. I don't know, I think we even said last week, but we certainly spoke about it over the chat. It's just a pair of trousers and it's just 3 bits of fabric, you know, the front 2 panels and the back for the top. This is not a complicated sew in terms of the number of pieces. What made it complicated was the luxurious bit and the piping going in. So, you know, give them what they want. Give them a basic pair of pajamas that you have pimped up with the fabric and the piping, which is what she did.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And Jill went home, and as we know, we were all in tears at this point because she came out and made a speech, which she didn't need to do, but wasn't it? Yeah. And
that was enough to finish me off. And I was just like, oh, for God's sake, don't do that.
It was phenomenal to have that on mainstream telly where it was never an issue. And how she said she was thinking about having the prosthetic, but she chose not to.
No, she had always worn a prosthetic.
Right.
She chose not to for the show.
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, and I think that would have, well, not only inspired, well, it has inspired so many, but been a role model for so many others. On us as well, it's just been a phenomenal episode, really, from that point of view. Wonderful.
Well, and I go back to what I said at the beginning. The issue is, as well, is they are all so good. Yeah. You know, in previous series, we've always had a bit of a niggle over some of the judging and maybe somebody who's going a bit further than they should have ever gone. But who would you have sent home if it wasn't Jill? None of them deserve to go home.
No, exactly. No. So we're at the quarterfinals now, Ting. Wow. Next week, quarterfinals, Christian, Áine, Magny, Deborah, and Brogan.
Yeah. What do you want me to do with that information?
Are you telling us your final 3? Your final 3? Or who you want to win?
Do you know, it's still... But it's like I've just said, because they're all so good, you've just got to have a bad week next week, and you're gone. But I think if you want me to commit to celluloid at this stage with 2 or 3 episodes left to go, I think you have to, while we're saying that they're all brilliant sewers, there's somebody who has been able to come up with some brilliant designs who is also a very good sewer and has also been kind of very, I can't think of the word now, but you know, they're not really aware of it. I think they've always been shocked whenever they've won something and kind of just don't expect it to happen. They're just not blundering along, because they're not blundering along, but they're just getting on with it and then just being really happy with what's going on. And so, yeah, I would quite like that person.
Well, tell us.
So after all of the grief I've given her, it would have to be Deborah.
Yeah.
As long as she doesn't go for a nice high-necked dress in the final.
Yeah, it's I was looking back with Carol on last episode. She's won 3 garments of the week.
Just consistently. Yeah. I mean, I know we talked about Christian being always the bridesmaid, never the bride, because he's been coming second so many times. But Deborah has just, whatever she seems to turn a hand to, it's never really gone horrendously wrong. There might have been an odd thing, but then also some of her designs as well, like the Miss Havisham one, and you know, I know I've criticised some of the silhouettes of her designs, but they're always worked. You know, you never looked at it and gone, "Oh, she's got that completely wrong." So I think, yeah, she's been consistent.
So
slow burner in the background, I think.
Yeah. So Deborah for me to win. Who I would like to win, and my final 3 is Brogan, Deborah, and Áine.
Yeah,
that's who I think is going to be in the final.
I did kind of say, didn't I, a couple of weeks back, that Áine had caught my eye, and I think she's another, a bit like Deborah, she's been in the background a bit.
I would love Christian, but I don't think he's got, compared to some of the other sewers. I don't know.
Well, the other reason I thought Christian might make it to the final is because really, for the first 4 episodes, we never really saw him. And part of me was like, are they kind of leaving it because you know that he's going to be here right until the end?
Yeah.
Editing wise. Yeah. So part of me would like to think, and again, like we've said, with Jill this week, it just takes a bad week. You know, if Brogan has a bad week next week, or, you know, if Deborah has a bad week next week, you can't forgive them for that because everyone is so good.
It's certainly not as clear. I think
in the past, we've kind of...
can you remember the 3 J's? Janet, Jen, and Julia?
Yeah.
We kind of knew those 3...
Juliet,
sorry. We kind of knew those 3 were going to be... It felt like those 3 were going to be in the final from week 4 or week 5.
Yeah.
Really. Even though there were some other nice sewers, they just seem to be way ahead. Whereas these are all way ahead and equal, really, ish. Yeah.
That's what I mean. I just can't... I mean, like, we kind of haven't even said Magny, and she won this week. But actually, a bit like Áine, she's been quietly sitting there, and every now and again, she pulls out something phenomenal. But when it's not phenomenal, it's still excellent. Do you know what I mean? It's not...
Yeah. Which, in a way, because it's so unpredictable, is actually going to be an interesting last 3 weeks. A quarterfinal, semi-final, and a final, because it's not clear what any of them could be in those final 3.
I find that a bit... I don't know what to say. I find that kind of a bit annoying because you almost want to have committed to someone.
I know. Yeah.
And you want an evil baddie, and we haven't got an evil baddie.
I know. We were saying at the start, to a certain extent, this season has kind of missed that. We haven't had that. Like, who was it last year?
No, I'm not saying names. There was somebody last year or the year before where they just kept getting through, and they never finished a garment.
Yeah.
And they just kept getting through.
It made that conversation, didn't it?
It gave us more to talk about. And, you know, I know people have hotly anticipated and been discussing the lack of the use of the slipper this season. That's partly because there's nothing controversial, because everyone's been so good, and the judging, as much as we normally attack those 2, has been fair each week. You know, you couldn't not have sent Jill home this week.
That's right.
And I think, you know, if they'd have sent Magny home or Deborah home, I think we would have been going, well, maybe it should have been Jill. But they seem to have been able to send the right person home each time as well. So the slipper rating for this week is still very, very minimal. I kind of had it cocked and aimed ready for like the whole lingerie bit because it was just too fiddly again, a bit like the Parker one. but not because of anything that they did. So, you know, you might have
It
got
wasn't thrown then.
Not really. I mean, it kind of was thrown just at the beginning as a kind of two fingers up at the task before they'd ever really done anything. But not thrown because of anything has been said, which is what it was originally used for.
Indeed.
That was the original use of the slipper when you're angry at the judging or something that's happened.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to all the fans of the slipper, but we've not had the controversy this year.
It will be interesting to see what you viewers think of this round, and then let us know in the comments your final threes or who you want, if you want to.
I do like reading the comments when I go to bed about 3 days after it's been published. It's when most of the comments are in by then, in the first 3 or 4 days, aren't they?
And it's lovely. It's wonderful reading the comments and how you get involved, and just the comments help you, make you think and reflect and go, oh, I never thought about that. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's an interesting point. So it does help to sort of give you a bigger picture, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay.
Well, there was us thinking we weren't going to fill the time and without Áine here, but apparently we do know quite a lot about lingerie.
Quarter-final week, 3 sessions to go of this series of Sewing Bee. It's gone by so quickly. Join us next week for...
I was going to say, don't forget that it's possibly another Inspired By week next week.
Yes. 1930s.
1930s, yeah. Might be slipper worthy because you know what Inspired does to me.
Join us next week. Áine will be back as well. 3 of us ready for Unpicked Week 8 quarterfinals 1930. See you, everyone. Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
Bye.